Hello, everyone. I am Sacrabolic, your envoy of hope, and welcome back to WIWR. Sailor Moon Eternal Movie 1 is an adaptation of the worst arc in Sailor Moon, which is the Dead Moon Circus arc. I already talked in length about the Dead Moon Circus arc in my 90s Sailor Moon WIWR episode, so I'm not going to get into it here. Instead, I'll just talk about how it was handled. The movie itself is very pretty, very well animated, loved the art style. Nothing really stood out too much about the soundtrack. I like that it delved more into the Sailor Scouts. I feel like they were really neglected, especially in the Crystal adaptions, which this is a part of. So it's nice to have them a little more fleshed out. The problem is I don't see why this needed to be a movie. Not just why they needed to make a Dead Moon Circus movie in general. I just don't see specifically why this needed to be a movie, because it still works in the general arc structure of previous Sailor Moon seasons, where they introduce the villains and then they have a sort of monster of the week as they take out the villains. It's very quick, very streamlined. One villain per Sailor Scout. They're introduced, they're taken out, they move on. But the problem is it still has the same formula as actual seasons of TV, because it's very clearly designed like that, or to work off of like manga arcs. So it just doesn't come together to create a cohesive movie. I have no idea why this is a movie other than to sell tickets to a movie, I guess. It doesn't work. It's very clearly like they turned anime seasons into a film, and then it like ends on a cliffhanger, but like not even like a good stinger cliffhanger, just a regular old cliffhanger. Like it just ends abruptly without really going anywhere. Sailor Moon Eternal Movie 2 concludes the end of the Dead Moon Circus arc. It definitely goes a different direction in the end than the 90s anime, though I assume this is a more manga accurate version. To be entirely honest, I've only read bits and pieces of the manga, so I'm not entirely sure how manga accurate this is. I'm not sure whether I prefer the original or the movie version of the ending. Guess it's just different. It is nice to see the Outer Guardians appear, of course, especially Saturn, who's like one of my favorites. It's a movie, honestly. I still don't understand the specific reason that they split these into two movies, other than money or to get through them quicker. The animation and the aesthetics is really gorgeous, of course, but there isn't anything that specifically justifies this not being a series of episodes. I don't know, the Dead Moon Circus is still pretty flat as far as the villains go, and honestly, the changes they make to Nelhelenia, at least compared to the 90s anime, are not for the better, and she is a much less interesting character in this. Though I would be lying if I say that the transformation into Eternal Sailor Moon at the end of the movie was not super fucking hype. Yokohama Shopping Log is about a robot girl in what seems to be a post-apocalypse that I think is caused by global warming, only because I read that it was caused by global warming on Mal, and not because I actually remember any part of the show actually mentioning global warming, who runs a coffee shop because her owner just straight up left for some reason. So she is given a camera by another robot, and then in episode 2, she gets like struck by lightning during a storm, ends up in a hospital, and looks at the lights of the destroyed former human city. That is it. That is all that happens. It's an hour of nothing. Yokohama Shopping Log Quiet Country Cafe. Basically what happens is a big storm kicks up and it destroys the robot from the original series cafe. And so she spends most of the whole show depressed. She goes on a journey and she meets people and nothing remotely interesting happens. The only reason I think this was any better is because it felt like there was an intention to this. Maybe I'm just reading into it, but it definitely felt like they were trying to get across the idea that, like, she is depressed and she's trying to, like, find herself. But, I mean, nothing happens, so. Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei is an adaptation of the original Megami Tensei novel, which of course later spun off into video game series like Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. It follows Nakajima, who is the reincarnation of Izanagi, although I don't know if that's actually mentioned in this anime, and Yumiko, who is the reincarnation of Izanami, which is, in fact, mentioned in this anime. Basically, Nakajima is using a computer to contact the demon Loki, where he has his hot teacher have digital sex with Loki, basically to just like summon demons and gain weird demon power. And I think it might have been told out of order, but I think the reason he did this is because he was getting bullied at school, so he kind of used demon power to kill his bullies. In one especially brutal scene that I didn't see coming, where like one girl like gets like hoisted up by her legs, and then another presumably mind-controlled girl just like bites her pussy off. Very violent. Anyway, they try to sacrifice Yumiko like they did to the teacher to Loki's ginormous sex drive, and he emerges from the computer and starts like murdering the other students in the class, except for like Yumiko and Nakajima, and it like teams up with the teacher to like rob banks, I think, for some reason. I have no idea what was happening there. But anyway, they manage to survive only because Yumiko finds out she's the reincarnation of Izanami and gains Cyclops eye lasers. She manages to save Nakajima, but then dies for some reason, and then Nakajima is supposed to bring her to an area to resurrect, but she ends up as like a sort of pseudo-zombie, and he ain't about that, so he just kind of like picks her up and doesn't resurrect her and lets her die, which I think is supposed to parallel the original story of Izanagi leaving Izanami and Yomi. And as Nakajima is carrying Yumiko's corpse through the woods, Cerberus shows up, and Nakajima's like, "Let's go, Kerberos!" And I'm like, I'm sorry, was Cerberus established as a character and I missed it or something? Where the hell did the dog come from? Anyway, they go on and they kill Loki, and that's all well and good, and Yumiko's dead, and Nakajima's really sad about it for some reason, even though he tried to have her raped by Loki earlier in the movie. And then at the end, the teacher gets contacted by Set, and then it just kind of ends, which is disappointing because you don't get to see Nakajima fight Set in space, and I thought that would be cool because I know that's in the novels, but that doesn't happen. So yeah, this is very rushed, clearly. I know the original Megami Tensei novels are considered pretty trashy, but I have to assume that, at least in original novel form, it made more sense, and trying to shove an entire novel into like 45 minutes just didn't work well. Oh, but the ending theme, Lady Your Eyes by Yuri with the Cash, absolute banger. Shin Megami Tensei Tokyo Revelation. Aside from like Magnetite and the Devil Summoning program, the best I can tell, not that I'm an expert, this has like nothing to do with Shin Megami Tensei. Like there's a few motifs and that is it. It is about a formerly bullied high school student with a crush on the main character who decides to make a pact with a demon so that they can summon Satan to destroy the world. The main character is the reincarnation of Masakato, and there's this one girl who seems to have like a bunch of magnetite in her body, and the main villain wants to sacrifice her to summon Satan. There's also this whole like demon-killing ninja clan going on. Kind of feels like none of the plot lines in this resolve. The final battle is super anticlimactic. This is just weird, and like it's just not very well realized. Like it seems like there's a lot of ideas, but they didn't have time to develop it, and it kind of feels like they just threw stuff at a wall to see what stuck. Zetsumetsu Shoujo, Amazing Twins, is about these two twin sisters, one of whom who has no body, who are psychic. The one with no body is just pure psychic power. If she kind of possesses a winged teddy bear, sort of. And apparently they're like the strongest psychics in the world. There are multiple psychics. They put on a magic show, the main girls do, with like a group of other psychics. But they're the most powerful psychics in the world, and an evil, like ethically dubious doctor wants to study them. So he tries to put them in like dangerous situations so that the girls would have to go all out with their powers. The main antagonist, as far as active combat role goes, is this other rival magician girl who has illusory powers, who has sort of a thing for the doctor, and is trying to prove her worth to him, even though to him, she's just a tool. I have to say that the story about the other magician girl was relatively interesting. She had some interesting character depth. Most of the other characters weren't that well fleshed out. There definitely seemed to be a lot going on. Like, this was sort of like the pilot to something, and there was definitely room to expand on. But what was here was pretty shallow. There were things to appreciate. It was decently well animated, but I just couldn't help but feel that it was pretty generic overall, and not a lot of interesting things happened. It definitely dragged a lot. Laughing Target is a horror story created by the legendary Rumiko Takahashi about a high school girl who, since she was a young child, has been possessed by preta, or hungry ghosts, and is engaged to be married to her cousin. The main character is the cousin, of course, and he has a girlfriend, and after the girl's mom dies, she comes expecting to marry the main character and is disappointed to find out that, one, he doesn't want to get married, and two, that he has a girlfriend, because she has saved herself for him. So she goes full yandere, tries to kill the girlfriend, tries to kill him, murders a dog, and it is about the main character and his girlfriend just generally investigating the, like, ghost-possessed cousin and trying to figure out how to, one, survive the situation, and to a lesser extent, try to basically, like, take her down. They don't really plot her demise, but it happens. It's a horror story. You get it. It's okay. The ending theme is a real banger. There's nothing really to latch on to about this. It's kind of entertaining, but it doesn't, what I will say is, to its best credit, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It gets in there, does what it wants to do, and then ends, but it also doesn't have too much meat on the bones. So, not great, but okay for a one-time watch. A-Girl is a silent film-esque short OVA anime, about 30 minutes, about a really cute girl who is in an abusive relationship with this, like, small-town rocker, and she ends up breaking up with him and going out with this hot dude that I think owns the building that they were staying at. Maybe? I'm not super clear on all the details there. Remember, this was a silent film. Most of it's just shown through images. But anyway, she ends up, like, going out with this hot dude who then, like, cheats on her with this other, honestly, more plain, like, nerdy-esque girl. They break up, and then they sort of seem like they're getting back together. She kind of has a thing for him, but she just can't put up with his shit, so she decides to skip town. And then at the end, they do manage to get back together because he sees through her ploy and he manages to head her off. It kind of ends with a question of, like, will he cheat on her again or will he stay faithful? It's not super clear. It's actually kind of cute. I definitely liked it. Surprisingly more into it, despite the fact that it was all images, definitely held my attention. Wasn't a lot to go on, kind of hard to tell sort of what was happening. I wasn't sure who was cheating on who at parts of it, but luckily there's just enough clues that you manage to piece everything together. It's not entirely silent, there is one line of spoken dialogue, or I should say like 2 or 3 lines of spoken dialogue in one scene right at the very end, and it's like the most powerful possible way it could have been delivered. Decent. Totsukuni no Shoujo is this like storybook, well-animated, like short OVA about a little girl who is living with this, what I assume is a bird demon, because we see a bird get turned into a demon right at the beginning of it, and it has feathers, so I assume it's the bird demon and not the big old horned monster that lives out in the woods. But anyway, it's this little girl living with the bird demon, and it is, basically implied that there's no dialogue in this, by the way, that if the bird demon were to touch another living thing, it would be like, it would corrupt it and turn it into a similar demon. So they do a really good job in this by contrasting like the black corruption with like the little girl who's like all white. Basically, if it touches her, she'll probably turn into a monster. That's implied. And it's this like cute little story about like how they have like affection for each other, but they have to like not like physically come into contact with each other. And it just sort of has this like father with daughter vibe. Very cute. It's My Life was a short, I think like 14-minute anime OVA special about like a nice little side story for the It's My Life manga, where the main cast puts on a garage sale and all of the old favorite side characters stop by to help them out. This would be a delightful bit of fan service if I had ever read It's My Life manga or had ever heard of it before watching this and didn't go in completely unaware that this is designed as a fan servicey side story for a manga I've never read. The Sprites of Floria is a short series that spins off of a Monster Strike, which I have never heard of in my entire life, about like flower fairies, I think, that were being hunted by this like military organization that wants to burn their flowers for some reason and like drain their powers. I actually do not understand the villain's motivations at all. But yeah, basically they're being hunted, and so they ended up living in like a small town together. And then one of them, after living there for a couple years, gets taken out, kidnapped by the army, and they have to go rescue her. And that's about it. That's what happens. I was kind of informed, if you remember, this showed up in like a Sacking Mal, that this had nothing really to do with Monster Strike, so I thought it would be safe to watch it. I just kind of feel like I left with a lot of questions and didn't super understand the point of this. The Girl from Fantasia is an OVA about an unlikable, perverted dick waffle who gets a hold of a magic carpet in which a half-human mage knight girl emerges from, and she's being hunted by a wizard who's angry because his ancestor was exiled from her magic carpet land. Quite frankly, I feel like that mere description basically told you my feelings about this show. My Mai is an anime that was popular with one of my mods, and I decided to just check it out. It is about a consultant who's sort of like a hybrid detective, just general helper person, I guess, named Mai, who most of the show is just an excuse for fan service and to get her in sexual situations. Sometimes it gets a little rapey, I'm not going to lie to you. But yeah, she has to find a doctor to help a sick girl who turns out to be possessed by the devil, and then they manage to deal with that. And then there's a fake haunted inn, and she has to help an actor who just breaks out in hives and is super allergic to sexual stuff. It has its moments, but it also has its boring parts. There was nothing too stand out about this. Thanks for watching. There should be one episode every week in February. I have been Sacrabolic, your envoy of hope, and this has been Water. Bye-bye.